The OECD's Pillar 1 Amount B framework is gradually moving from policy design to practical implementation, as countries begin adopting, modifying, or rejecting the simplified transfer pricing regime for baseline marketing and distribution activities. Welcome to another episode of Reg Talks, as we explore how countries take diverging paths on OECD Pillar 1 Amount B.
It's fascinating because we've reached a turning point. I'm excited to dive into how this framework, first agreed in 2021, is moving from theory into real-world practice. I'm especially curious about who's adopting it, who's resisting, and why.
Exactly. Today, we'll unpack what Amount B actually does, spotlight the countries embracing or rejecting it, and explore what that means for businesses and tax authorities. Plus, we'll touch on the lingering uncertainty around the broader Pillar 1 talks.
So buckle up, we'll look at how Luxembourg, Belgium, and Denmark are putting Amount B into action, the pushback from France, Ecuador, and Turkey, and finish with the big picture implications for global tax reform.
Let's start with the basics. Amount B is part of the OECD's efforts to make transfer pricing more predictable for routine marketing and distribution. Instead of lengthy, expensive benchmarking, it offers standardized pricing methods.
And that matters because, up until now, companies had to wrangle with local authorities over every little detail, especially in lower capacity countries. The idea is to cut compliance costs, reduce disputes, and give everyone more certainty.
What's clever is that it pulls in the transactional net margin method and sets clear profit margins based on industry and risk factors. It's not mandatory, though that's where things get interesting.
It really sets the stage for today's patchwork of responses. Some countries are all in, others are saying no thanks, and the rest are somewhere in between.
Speaking of early movers, Luxembourg and Belgium just rolled out official guidance. But they didn't just copy the OECD playbook, they tailored it.
Luxembourg's approach is pretty strict. To recognize Amount B outcomes, the counterparty must be in a covered jurisdiction, have a tax treaty, and must have adopted Amount B themselves. No shortcuts allowed.
Exactly, and their rules focus on wholesale distribution, no commodities, services, or intangibles. Plus, they require annual disclosure and hefty documentation. The pricing itself is set by a matrix, then tweaked based on industry and country risk.
Belgium's following suit with its own circular, but they add another twist. They'll only accept Amount B results for cross-border deals, not domestic ones. Eligible distributors also have to keep expenses within a set range.
That brings us to Denmark, which is going beyond just implementing Amount B. They're using it as a springboard for broader simplification.
What's cool is that Denmark is letting companies rely on Amount B if their trading partner is in a select group of countries, which includes places like Brazil, Kenya, and Vietnam, provided there's a tax treaty and both sides adopt the framework.
And they're not stopping there. Denmark is also raising documentation thresholds and carving out new exemptions to lighten the load for smaller businesses.
It's a smart move for smaller companies that can get bogged down by paperwork. Still, these changes only apply to wholesale trading of tangible goods, no services or commodity deals included.
But not everyone is on board. France, for example, isn't adopting Amount B domestically, though they'll recognize it to avoid double taxation in other treaty countries.
Ecuador, on the other hand, is flat out rejecting it. Their tax authority says Amount B has no force unless it's written into local law, and they want to stick with their own transfer pricing rules.
Turkey's approach is similar. They prefer traditional benchmarking and won't use the OECD's fixed profit margins for distributors or agents. It's a reminder that harmonizing global tax rules is never easy.
Makes you wonder if more countries will follow this wait-and-see strategy, especially as local politics and existing legislation come into play.
All of this is happening while the bigger Pillar 1 project, the push to tax large digital players more fairly, is still stuck in the mud. The UK just announced another delay, pushing implementation to 2027.
That's significant, especially since the UK's digital services tax will stick around in the meantime. India's also holding back, citing concerns over dispute resolution and withholding taxes. It shows just how fractured international consensus still is.
So, with some countries racing ahead and others hitting pause, the landscape is anything but settled. It's a reminder that technical tax reforms are always at the mercy of broader politics.
The big question is how all this plays out for companies trying to comply with a patchwork of national rules. There's a lot riding on where Amount B goes next.
So, what should listeners remember? First, Amount B is moving into real world use, but adoption varies widely by country.
Second, countries like Luxembourg, Belgium, and Denmark are implementing it, but with strict eligibility rules and plenty of local twists. Third, resistance from countries like Ecuador and Turkey keeps the international playing field uneven.
If you're managing transfer pricing, now's the time to check whether your jurisdictions are covered and get your documentation in order. Staying proactive will be critical as the ground keeps shifting.
Thanks for joining us today. Keep an eye on evolving guidance, because in global tax, nothing stays still for long. Until next time, stay curious and well informed.